live leading into a game against the Indiana football Hoosiers. Alex Drain has seen another linebacker he despises.
And one we like. We finally like a linebacker
It's all
from Indiana.
happening.
We always like one linebacker from Indiana.
All right, this is technically MGoRadio. I'm Brian Cook.
I'm Seth Fisher.
I'm Alex Drain.
And we would like to talk about our sponsors.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I bring that channel up.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you to Underground Printing for making all this all possible. UGP makes custom apparel such as t-shirts and sweatshirts and was founded by 2 Michigan alums over 20 years ago. They have 3 retail locations in Ann Arbor and offer thousands of University of Michigan athletic products for sale, ranging from clothing to accessories and memorabilia. Check them out at ugpmichiganapparel.com or check out our selection of shirts on the mgoblogstore.com. We'd also like to thank our associate sponsors, Peak Wealth Management, Homeshare Lending, Ann Arbor Elder Law, Michigan Law Grad, Human Element, the Phil Klein Insurance Group, Venue by 4M, where we record on Sundays, and SignalWire, which is where we are doing this one right now. All right. So Indiana comes into last season, and for the first time, perhaps in the history of Indiana football, they have expectations. They are ranked 17th in the preseason poll. And they even meet a little bit of that expectation when they beat Penn State on a 4th down scramble by Michael Penix, which was definitely short of the goal line, but everybody on the internet was like, just give it to them.
It's too
Let
awesome.
them have this one. And they got it, and
Yeah.
then everything fell apart. And
Yeah.
now they're here. They're 3-2 on the season, but they're 83rd in SP+. And it really looks like this should be a bloodbath for Michigan offensively.
Yeah, Indiana's defense, they're really struggling right now. They're getting gashed in the passing game in particular, and that's kind of pretty disappointing because the thought was that this was going to be a particularly good secondary, that some of the other pieces on the defensive line, linebackers, had moved on, but they're returning 2 veteran corners who had played really well in the past, and unfortunately, they're not playing very well right now. Tawan Mullen, who was all Big Ten level for a few seasons there, had some injuries last year, and the last couple weeks has just gotten attacked relentlessly in the passing game. And then Jalen Williams on the flip side has not been as sharp as usual, not as rough as Mullen, but he's also dealing with an injury. And so we don't know if he's available either. And part of the issues are related to the fact that they have to blitz on basically every play to get any pressure. And if they don't get pressure, the cornerbacks are just not making the stops right now.
Yeah, the targeting data you put in your preview of the Indiana defense was shocking because Tywan Mullen showed up in this conference as a true freshman, was immediately one of the best corners in it. And for him to be targeted repeatedly over any other Indiana corner is a performance drop that, Michael Penix like. So whatever bad juju this program has is not done with it yet.
Yeah, and with Penix, there was somewhat of an explanation injury-wise. Mullen last year a little bit, but I don't know. It's a little concerning, and their safeties are pretty veteran too. I mean, they're starting a 4-year player, a 5th-year player, a 5th-year player, and a 6th-year player in the secondary. And these are not transfers. These are guys who've been in the program, and yet the last 3 weeks, they're giving up close to 70% completion on almost 9 yards an attempt and a lot of touchdowns, not enough interceptions. And that's kind of the primary problem right now. But again, it's hard to talk about the passing game without talking about the fact they don't get any organic pass rush. And so they registered as the blitziest team I've seen so far. And it makes a lot of sense. They are just getting ripped apart if they don't ramp it up.
It does seem like they have one guy who might be able to generate a little bit by himself. He's a true freshman. He's 6'5". He's 225 pounds. So not a guy who's really ready for full-time duties. But Dasan McCullough already has 4 sacks on the year, despite having that kind of Uche role. Do you think he? Go ahead.
It helps that he was a number 75 overall recruit in the composite. This is a guy who is a much better recruit than typically anything Indiana has. He was the number 9 edge in the country in his recruiting class.
That's I almost did a spit take at that. Jesus. How does it happen? Oh, he's from Bloomington. Okay, that makes a little bit of sense, I guess.
I had to look up the same thing. I mean, that's the only guy they really got. Like they have a ton of transfers on this team. The starters on defense, not so much. The starters like one of the starters on defense, Brian Fitzgerald. I don't know if you remember him, but he played against us in I think 2017. Like he was a Husky when he was a true freshman, and that's their their
Okay,
hybrid
we
space
just talked
player guy.
about right. We got to be very clear. He didn't play for UConn.
Right.
It's their space backer
Michigan,
spot.
Michigan plays lots of Huskies. All right, but that's their term for their space backer. And he was actually good at that, but the problem, he was always slow. And like they've moved him back to strong safety full time, and they're playing this tiny little nickel at that position where he's supposed to still kind of be a linebacker. And their blitzes require him to kind of blitz sometimes. And if there's a guy that it's weird seeing Indiana not have that kind of player when that seems to be the easiest kind of player to find.
Well, it was Marcelino Ball there for about 12 years. So
Yeah, and Fitzgerald's the
one
guy who was
thing
kind of
we
backing
didn't
up
actually.
Ball.
I was talking about Desan McCullough, and I just
Yeah.
wanted Alex's take on whether he could be a problem for Michigan on passing downs. Is this guy already good enough that he's going to consistently beat a Trente Jones or a Ryan Hayes?
I didn't see him like a ton in the passing situation. The way he popped up the most was that he comes on sometimes when they do their five-man defensive line, and Nebraska would put him. He would be on the backside of a play, and Nebraska would just never block him. Just never. Nobody touched him on like a huge chunk of the plays, and so oftentimes he would be the guy like looping around the backside to bring a play down from behind. And I was repeatedly just like, why don't they touch him at all? But I didn't see a ton in the pass rushing situations at the moment, so I don't know per se. Otherwise, I don't have a lot to say about these pass rushers overall. It was the blitzes from the second level that were doing something. Particularly Cam Jones, the linebacker, and then Noah Pierre, the Husky.
Yeah, that's
Well-
kind of what I was trying to get at there. Is that Brian Fitzgerald was the guy who was actually good at that.
Well, I mean, the thing about Tom Allen is he's always been really good at devising and timing blitzes, giving you unusual looks, and you can see that in the sack rates that Indiana generates. They're 76th on standard downs, and they're 14th on passing downs. So, given the state of the secondary, and given the way Indiana currently shapes up as a team that does nothing on standard downs and then gets unleashed on passing downs, this seems like a game for some first down play action from Michigan.
Yeah, and this is a game where I am pretty interested in just seeing them let JJ air it out a little bit, and ideally you'd want to see him hit a couple big plays because Cincinnati hit some. Nebraska had a 70-yard touchdown bomb to Trey Palmer over the top.
I think Idaho had a big play too.
Yeah, there's a concerning number of busts for the experience they have in the safety level. So in particular, this is a game where we want to see if JJ's deep ball is finally in sync with his receivers and is kind of ready to go. But overall, this is a defense that the pass defense is kind of the issue right now. But I am also sort of wondering whether Michigan will be able to just load up with the meat, 2-3 tight ends out there and just run the ball on them like they did Maryland and to some degree Iowa as well. I mean, I didn't see enough there to make me think that they're going to lock down the trenches either. I think that Michigan can probably do whatever they want.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that I think we both came to independently, just looking at the personnel here, because
Yep.
you did mention that when they go big, they tend to bring in McCullough as
Yep.
a fifth defensive lineman. And as I mentioned, 6'5", true freshman, 225. I mean, I can't imagine that Michigan's tight ends aren't going to eat that guy up.
Well, and the other guy they rotate in is J.H. Tevis, the defensive tackle, and he's 282. And he's kind of their pass rushing defensive tackle as well.
But
he's the other guy.
It's possible that if they are inclined to go to a 5-man front, they would go to him, and because he is 60 pounds heavier and can give them more of a 5-2 look. And I mean, he was a starter at Cal last year. I looked up his bio and I was like, this is a very odd transfer because that's like Cal's not great, but it's a pretty lateral move for an established starter. But that does give Indiana a modicum of depth here. Yeah, so I think Michigan will try it. They'll throw out some 3 tight end sets, see how it's doing, and then if it's not doing that great, they'll just return to bombing it through the air against the secondary. Looks very vulnerable to that.
Yeah, I generally agree. I mean, this is not a defense that I think is going to pose a lot of problems for Michigan. They've given up, was it 45 to Cincy, 30 something to Western Kentucky, 35 to Nebraska. I mean, doesn't seem like a great unit.
Yeah, goes without saying, pretty much. Do we have anything else on this before we hit to a break?
We have to talk about the offense.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to do that after the break.
No. We're
Okay.
gonna get Indiana on because I want to get a whole bunch of hockey in this episode.
All right, that's right. I forgot about that.
It's our hockey
All right,
preview.
all right. So on the offensive side of the ball, they bring in Connor Bazelak, a Mizzou transfer, and they're having him throw about 90 passes a game. 90% of those passes are within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. It's this offense again. We've seen it in Hawaii. That was their offense. UConn, that's their offense. Different personnel, but pretty much the same limitations because they're starting a D2 transfer at tackle now. He went to the University of West Texas A&M, which I did not know existed until today.
Yeah, I had seen some of Indiana's games this year, but had not watched them kind of cohesively until this week. And I just was struck by what Jamie said on Sunday, where he said that this offense is like watching a guy sprint really fast on a treadmill and then fall down after 30 seconds because they they move really fast and they run a lot of plays and they don't really go anywhere. And it's a very upsetting experience because it's just the offense you run if you have no desire to do anything explosive, if you have no desire to do anything particularly good, you just run screen after screen after screen, and they run I think 3.1 plays per minute, the fastest in I think it's D1. Jamie had that stat on Sunday.
Oh God.
And
well, seems like the UFR tables have turned.
yeah, I mean they
10 play drives that go 30 yards.
I mentioned
played,
that in the UFR. I think I said I got Walt Bell next week, so everybody just be nice to me.
They played Illinois week 1. That's the one I did. They ran 82 or something plays against Nebraska last week. They ran 104 plays. So their screen game either goes to one of 3 people. They have 2 receiving backs, Sean Shivers and Josh Henderson. Those are 2 transfers, one from Auburn, one from North Carolina. They're both, little speedy guys. And then Cam Camper is their primary screen wide receiver, but he's hurt. So is DJ Matthews. We're not sure if either guy is going to be healthy. Matthews is their one viable deep target. The offense is totally different if those guys are healthy versus injured. So whether they have hope of doing anything may rest on their ability to come into this game fully healthy. And then also the tight end, AJ Barner, is also a guy they throw some screens to. And so they do all kinds of stuff. They line up with 4 and 5 out wide. They'll do trips to the top and then 2 guys block. They'll do flare screens, smoke screens, tunnel screen. I mean, it's just on and on and on. But the thing they don't do is really threaten you in any explosive manner outside of a couple deep shots to Matthews.
Those have to be carefully picked because if they get in situations where the opposition can expect a pass that is more than 5 yards down the field, their offensive line falls apart.
Right.
So similarly to their defense, it's a totally different story on a passing down versus a standard down. 2% sack rate on a standard down, 8.3 on a passing down. So pretty much just get these guys to a passing down and let Mike Morris and Iabioki go to it, and you're probably going to get off the field.
Yeah, I mean, Parker Hanna, the transfer you mentioned, who is now filling in for Matt Bedford, he tore his ACL in the game I watched against Illinois. That was week 1. I saw enough in a half of Parker Hanna to know what's going on there, and the results have not been any different since then. And it's not just that, though. The rest of the line's pretty creaky. I mean, Luke Haggard's been around for a long time. He's a pretty decent player overall, but is wobbly in pass pro situations. Both of the guards, I think, are weak spots potentially. Zach Carpenter got pushed in a locker in the game I saw against Illinois. He's done better in other games, so we didn't give him the cyan, but that was not a great showing from him. And this unit, they can't pass protect at all. They also can't run the ball at all. I mean, their yards at all. Their yards per carry clips are shocking. And so
they're like 128th in line yards.
Yeah. And they only run it 15, 20 times a game because it's not even worth trying.
Yeah.
They run it a few times and they're like, yep. No
they have
different.
the element of surprise on their side, and those are still their results.
Does anybody remember like 2017-ish Maryland? I know that's a dumb question because nobody has any capability to remember like old Maryland teams. But like that was Walt Bell, right? Like he had like these scat backs all the time, and like
but he had some real talent at running.
But he had running backs that could, So the problem is they got a couple transfers, and neither one of them are really panning out. And that's what you need. The players themselves have to do it because they just avoid the offensive line entirely, right? They're going to line up guys, and they're going to have people covered and whatnot, and they don't care. It's just like we're going to put a ton of space around this one dude and see if you can tackle him. And I don't see it working against Michigan because Saner's still shown he can do that. Rod Moore's shown he can do that. Leave R.J. Moten deep and play man coverage on these guys, and you're done.
Well, man coverage can be sketchy against these kind of screen-heavy teams sometimes, so you're going to have to keep a head on a swivel there. So the other thing about Bazelak that I think you noted, Alex, is that once you get beyond 8 to 10 yards downfield, his accuracy gets really shaky.
Yeah, and I came into this game kind of thinking that he had a noodle arm because I had watched the final drive against Illinois live at the time, and I remember he was short-arming all these throws to guys who were only like 6 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. And then I went and actually watched the full game, and that's not really the case. I mean, sometimes he underthrows, and sometimes he throws it way over the guy's head, and it's just kind of all over the place for him. So, yeah, he's okay. He can throw the screens competently. He can run a little bit, not very much, but they do give him a couple reads. They ran the option with him at one point, but is he better than Evan Simon at Rutgers? Yeah. But is he particularly?
I was momentarily terrified you were going to say no there, and I was like, "That's really."
When you said he's any better than I thought you were going to mention, like the UConn or Hawaii starters. Like that's where I thought you were going with that conversation.
Hey, UConn won an FBS game last week.
They did. They did.
Michigan's best non-conference.
Fresno State, hang your head in shame. So. I looked at their special teams. Pretty much the only thing to note was that their punting was very bad last year and looks like it's not any better this year. So they gave up 20 returns last year, and that's a pretty hefty number for modern college football. So this might be an opportunity for AJ Hayden to get something done. Their kicker's pretty decent. Not great, but solid. Final score, estimations, gentlemen. Alex.
Can I point out something real quick? Oh. The punter is not an Aussie, as you said in your preview. He's New Zealander. So kind of more of a
Oh, God. I've just mortally offended Indiana's punter. He's going to come for me. That's the worst thing you can do to a Kiwi.
Yes.
That is the worst thing you can do.
That or, like, start the conversation with Lord of the Rings.
Well, at least he's a punter. Yeah. If he was a rugby player, I'd be in real trouble. Alex, final score.
42-13.
Seth.
42-27.
I had 39-15. 27?
Well, I've got a bit now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break, come back, and is it UFR first or hockey?
Hockey. Want the perfect game day outfit? Underground Printing has unique, great-fitting U of M apparel and officially licensed apparel from legendary Michigan names like Woodson, Howard, Ufer, and more. UGP also specializes in custom printed apparel and promotional items for groups, events, and businesses. Whether you need one shirt as a gift or 1,000 shirts for a charity walk, Underground can customize almost anything for groups large or small. To learn more, visit Underground Printing at one of our 3 convenient locations around Ann Arbor or online at undergroundshirts.com. It's painless. It's online. It's group ordering made easy for your next custom printed apparel order. Pogo from Underground Printing will save you time and hassle. Whether you're selling shirts for a fundraiser, organizing a large event, trying to collect sizes and payments for a family reunion, or, ordering a whole bunch of shirts with your Kickstarter, Underground Printing is here to help. Save time and hassle every step of the way with their easy-to-use site. No more guessing what to order, chasing people down to pay, wasting time trying to sort out the order. They'll set it up, you can just sit back and relax. They'll even take care of individual shipping. To learn more about Pogo, visit them at any of their convenient locations or at pogo.undergroundshirts.com.
At Peak Wealth, we believe we can help you retire with confidence. It's Nick Hopwood, certified financial planner from
Peak Wealth Management
in Plymouth. I graduated from Michigan in 2001 with an econ degree and founded Peak Wealth Management in 2014. And now we have over $240 million of assets under management. As a freshman in 97, winning the national championship in football and hockey didn't get any better than that. Both my wife and I lived in Bursley that year, and it's crazy because we never actually met while living in the same dorm. Probably because she had a car and I had to ride the bus. But we named our dog Bursley anyway, and he's on the payroll here at Peak Wealth Management. At Peak, we're fee-based. We're your fiduciary, which means everything we recommend is always in your best interest. We partner with leading institutional money managers, focus on low fees, and make sure every client has a financial plan covering retirement, college, tax, estate, insurance, and cash flow. Simply put, we are
Peak Wealth Management,
your comprehensive financial coach. Book your second opinion at peakwm.com/mgoblog.
Peak Wealth Management.
Retire with confidence.
1 and 2 and...
If you find yourself on the wrong side of the law, you want a Michigan man in the huddle. Call criminal law attorney and former prosecutor Jonathan Paul at 248-924-9458 or visit his website at michiganlawgrad.com. John is a proud graduate of the University of Michigan Ross School of Business and Michigan Law School, and he looks forward to showing you the Michigan difference. If you want to see where our post-game podcast happens, or if you need a spot to land in Ann Arbor, check out 4M, Prentice Partners' beautiful brand new flagship property at 830 Henry Street in Lower Burns Park and across the bridge from the Big House. Their 11 spacious 6-bedroom, 6-bath suites feature state-of-the-art digital capabilities and are laid out for comfortable, efficient collaboration. You can also rent a 4M unit for shorter stays, say if you want to come to town for a football weekend. I want to add myself that they're also taking over Lucky's. We're really excited about their plans for that space. So if you're by the stadium, swing by 830 Henry or visit prentice4m.com.
Welcome back to MGoRadio 8.5. We welcome in Dave Nasternak from Yost Ice Arena. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing well, but Steven Adams was talking to me, and he's not so happy with you, Brian.
Who's? Oh no! I thought he was a hockey player for a second, and then I'm like, no, wait, he's very angry at me because he's a TV. So the puck drops on Michigan hockey's 100th season in about 90 minutes against Lindenwood. If you haven't heard of Lindenwood, that's fine. There are many people who attend Lindenwood who have never heard of Lindenwood. This is a program that just started a D1 hockey team. It's in St. Louis, I want to say.
Yep.
And they're coming off a sweep at the hands of Minnesota, but they were fairly competitive in the second game.
Caveat to being Minnesota's backup goalie giving up 2 shorthanded goals, I think. So, okay. Not sure if that's
we're grading on a curve here.
Okay.
I think their coach, what's his name? Former Red Wing.
Rick
Zombo.
Zombo,
Alex did
it. Zombo.
Alex, did Did
No
anyone
one-
contact you?
no
Do you
one
have to buy anyone
contact-
tickets and dinner at Culver's?
No one contacted me with a Rick Zombo jersey.
That's
Did
unfortunate.
does he? It's like he's on boat. Anyway, let's not talk about Lindenwood. Let's talk about Michigan. So they enter the season. We'll start with the defense. Luke Hughes, possibly the Hobie Baker favorite, give or take. Hobie Baker voters being weird. Jacob Truscott probably gonna be his pairing mate because that's what they've done their entire career so far. And then you have Ethan Edwards, although apparently not tonight, as an offensive defenseman. You have Seamus Casey as another offensive defenseman. And I feel like the questions on that 6-man unit, who's going to pair with those two guys?
Yeah. Well, so we'll see, David. What's the line chart looking like tonight?
So it's Truscott and Hughes, Casey,
Okay.
Holtz, and then Fantilli and Pearson.
presumably
which-
the Edwards spot.
Probably,
Yeah.
because Fantilli is also more of an offensive defenseman.
Yeah. So between Holtz, Pearson, and Truscott, you have 3 defensive defensemen, and then in the 3 Brian mentioned is the offensive guys. I mean, it's pretty logical ways you can put those guys together. It depends on whether you want to talk about familiarity or handedness in terms of configuring the pairs, but those seem like the 6 guys. The other 3 options are Fantilli, Driskinis, and Brendan Miles, who all seem like developmental players, freshmen without a ton of pizzazz in their recruiting profile. So it seems like those are the 6 guys, and I feel pretty solid about that.
To be
You
clear,
have-
just in case people don't realize, you're talking about the older Fantilli, not the
Correct.
younger.
Yeah,
player. When you say not a whole lot of recruiting, then, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And another
Adam
Fantilli,
Fantilli he's clearly on the top line,
Yeah,
so we don't have to worry about that.
just wanted to make sure anyone who's like, wait a
Yeah.
minute, I thought.
All right. Yep.
All right. So, because you have in returning there, you have Truscott, who's a 2-year starter. You have Hughes, who's 1-year starter and a star. Ethan Edwards, 1-year starter and a star. Keaton Pearson, or borderline star. Keaton Pearson, 4-year player at this point. And then Steve Holtz played 11 or 12 games last year. So that's 4 returners plus a guy who played some games in the Big Ten last season. So I think there's a higher floor at defense than a lot of people give him credit for. And then you plug in Seamus Casey, a 2nd-round pick. I think there's plenty of talent there, plenty of returning production. Yes, you lose some good players in Power and Blankenberg, but I think people are selling the defense a little short, perhaps.
Well, we talked about on HockeyCast that just like that could be the strength of the team, at least until the forwards kind of begin to gel and sort of find their legs and you work out the lines. Because, I mean, I'm looking through the lines and, I mean, they got Nolan Moyle on the 2nd line tonight. You know, we'll see if that sticks. We'll see if that's just a this weekend thing. But, you know, we're not completely sure where all of the scoring is going to come from. There's obviously a lot of talent at freshmen, but, you know, we do know that there's a lot returning on defense. And, you know, Michigan's defense has gotten better over the last second halves of the last couple of years. And then obviously the goalie that, you know, we'll talk about in a minute, but that's this series aside, but going forward, that's sort of where I'm thinking that Michigan is going to find their comfort and work from there.
So I think we have an idea of what to expect from Hughes. We have an idea of what to expect from Truscott. Pearson and Holtz, probably pretty small windows. Like they're not going to be superheroes. They're probably not going to be disasters. To me, the swing guys on the defense are Edwards and Casey. Now, Edwards came on in the second half of last year, really looked extremely dynamic. I was actually surprised to hear Alex call him a star and then correct himself a little bit. But it does feel like he might be on the verge of that.
Yeah.
And Casey looked pretty freaking fun in the exhibition. So what are your takes on those two guys?
Well, I mean, Casey was a guy that had a much better, profile in terms of his skill and his ability to handle the puck than a lot of defensemen, even guys that get drafted pretty highly. That's his calling card. So I think you're going to have a lot of fun moments with him dangling guys and things like that. And I'm curious to see his defense because draft profiles, we're a little more optimistic about his at least defensive fundamentals. So we'll see if that can hold up. He's a little bit lighter of a guy too, right? And that's the same thing with Ethan Edwards. To smaller guys, not super heavy, and that's where I'm excited to have Holtz back on the blue line to be able to provide a little bit of thump to counteract some of those size issues, because we saw that a little bit against forechecking teams in the tournament and some of the postseason games.
Well, and because they're split down the middle in terms of like activated offensive defensemen and sort of stonewall pillar defensemen, you can pair each of them up and then you can allow people to do what they do best. And I think the other thing that we haven't really gotten into as much is that, with Naruto, I expect them to be a little more progressive and going for it in terms of like, the NHL has sort of been taken over in some ways by offensive defensemen that can carry the puck and go and create. And I think that Michigan has a chance to do that, especially like what Brian said with Hughes. And then, Casey's looked good too. So, and Edwards had his moments. So when I think they can get some offense out of their defense, up and down their pairings.
All right, let's move on to the forwards. The top line seems pretty locked in at this point. Dylan Duke, Mackie Samoskevich, and the aforementioned Adam Fantilli. This line looked fantastic against Windsor. I love the combination of Fantilli with Samoskevich, who just needs a little bit of room to get a rocket of a wrister off, and then Dylan Duke as the net front guy who gets in the corners and grinds and cleans up all the messes that these guys are going to make in the offensive zone.
Yeah, Fantilli is the big the big guy on this team. We'll see how quickly he can assimilate to college hockey, but he looked pretty sharp in the exhibition, and he's a player that has a ton of hype coming in. And when you look at the comparables that I put in the season preview stuff in terms of guys that scored at his level at his age in the USHL, they're all extraordinarily impressive comparisons and guys that were instant stars in college hockey. And so if he shows up,
could we get some names there for people who aren't familiar?
So a guy named Kyle.
Careful with the last one.
A guy named Kyle Connor, who I don't think people have ever heard of him, but Thomas Vanek, who is a pretty good NHL player for a period of time, very good at Minnesota when he played there in the early 2000s. And then you can, the loftier one, which isn't the most ideal because he did play at the USNTDP, but draft position, everything else in terms of what scouts want to see is Jack Eichel the year he played at Boston U. Those guys were all scoring in the 60-point range. Michigan didn't have any guys scoring in that range last year, so it seems pretty unrealistic in theory. But look, if this guy wants to go at the top of the draft in a loaded draft year, he needs to come in and rock college hockey and show that he's one of the very best players in the country right away. So we'll see if he can do that. The nice thing is he might not have to, because you have Samoskevich, because you have Frank Nazar when he's healthy, and potentially Rutger can help as well. And then even a guy like Dylan Duke, who I'm hoping to see take some steps forward. We heard that he worked on his skating in the offseason. If he can become more dynamic and dangerous with the puck on his stick, that will go a long way.
Yeah, for Duke, 19 points as a freshman in 41 games. Like, I don't necessarily think he needs to take a big step forward to become a point per game player. Maybe he'll be more of a passenger on this line, but even a passenger on this line, he's going to get a ton of opportunities. And I liked his game as a freshman. He wasn't a great skater, but he was really good in the corners and a guy who was always seemingly in the right place at the right time. So hockey IQ has a lot to do with his ability.
You need a dude like that on like the Euro Twins line, right? Like you have these two guys who are incredibly skilled, incredibly fast. Samoskevich, you need to get him space, and then you just need somebody to kind of go in and muck about in front of the net a little bit. And Duke is the perfect guy for that because he plays that.
Neither of those guys are European, though. I don't know what you're saying.
But you know what? But like that's Michigan's top skill line, and then you add a guy who's going to be like the muck in the front of the net because you don't want to you don't want Fantilli doing that.
The big thing
but go ahead.
The big thing with Duke, and I think Samoskevich too, is not as much will they get that much better, but will their production increase because their roles increased. And this is clearly going to be their top line. It's probably going to be the centerpiece of their power play unit, you would think. So they're just going to have a lot more opportunities. And Duke did well with his opportunities last year as sort of a bouncing around, but then settling around the third line. Well, now he's going to be moving up and getting a lot of offensive zone draws and playing with the best players on the team. As long as his work rate stays the same, I would expect his production to go up even without getting better, so to speak.
And I think he will. I mean, I think that's something
Yeah.
that's definitely in the offing.
Right.
All right, moving on from the projected top line. Now you have a blender of about 6 guys who could end up in various spots.
I mean,
Go ahead.
just tonight it's weird because
Yeah.
they have
Nazar's out.
Right, and they have stuff McGroarty, but they also have Moyle on the second line. And Alex and I talked about this is like maybe they're going to try him or Estapa up top to see if he can fit and sort of be the grinder finisher on those lines in front and in the corners. I don't know that either one of those guys are going to be top 6 second line players, but I mean, with a couple of their players out, it might not be a bad time to try it. And then you look down at the third line, you have Hallam's a freshman, Hughes a freshman, Ciccolini returns, a guy that we liked a couple of years ago, missed all of last year to an unfortunate injury, but at the end of 2 years ago was starting to score. I think he had 7 goals down the stretch, which was kind of a jump. I believe that was his second year,
sophomore year, yeah.
Yeah. And then the fourth line is kind of going to be what we talked about before. Like,
yeah, it's just a blender of guys who are pretty solid, but as a fourth line, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what are they going to get out of McGroarty and Brindley? Can Jackson Hallam translate what was a fantastic USHL year? I mean, he's a year older than some of the freshmen. He was drafted a year ago. He spent his D+1 year in the USHL. We have an inside contact in the USHL who thought he was one of the very best players in that league. So, I mean, it looks like they're going to have 2 more lines that could hypothetically be productive. And then TJ Hughes is another guy where it's like, what are you going to get out of him? Because he scored like a maniac in the AJHL as a 20-year-old. So does any of that translate? You can go back in the AJHL and you look at their overagers and none of them do anything. So does this guy's excessive scoring pace make him more of a threat to actually do stuff in college?
Can I quote Alex?
Sure.
Maybe.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, TJ Hughes, no one knows anything about. He was never on draft radars. There's seldom clips of him. It's kind of a big unknown, and they added him to the class late May, and then he's in the lineup for the exhibition. Is he in the lineup tonight, David?
Yeah, he's the third line center.
Okay, so
which is higher than I anticipated.
Yeah, we'll get a look at him and see how he looks. I don't really know what to expect from him. Brindley is a guy I'm kind of excited about. I like his skill set and what he can bring. I think he's not being talked about perhaps as much because he hasn't been drafted yet, playing in his draft eligible year at Michigan, but a unique set of tools. I mean, there's too much talent here to not have productive second and third lines. It's just a matter of using the first few months of the season to find the combinations that work, find some cohesion, and then when you really get into calendar 2023, kind of have something going.
And getting Nazar back is key, I think, because he sets that second line center role. I don't know that Brindley's ready to be a second line center, maybe. And then the third line, you would kind of want that to be Brindley, and then the fourth line you can jumble. But without Nazar, you asked, what can McGroarty do? Well, I'm going to guess not quite as much without Nazar. Now, maybe this weekend because of level of competition and all that, but going forward, especially look next week and BU comes to town, hopefully he'll be ready to go. I mean, I don't know I have any official word or anything, but it seems that it's probably some level of injury related if he didn't play last weekend either.
I mean, so specifically McGroarty was supposed to be top 10, maybe top 5 pick, and then his draft stock dropped considerable amount, still went 14th overall, and produced with the national team in a way that makes you think that he's going to be an immediate impact guy in college hockey. 35 goals, 34 assists, 69 points in 54 games. If you do that with the U18s, you're a scoring line player pretty much from day one in college hockey.
And he was the captain of the NTDP.
Mm-hmm.
People love him, love the intangibles. And He's an interesting player because Michigan doesn't take a lot of guys like him. The big knock and part of related to his fall in the draft was the skating. And Michigan tends to take really good skaters, and they don't tend to take a lot of big guys that are more plodding. And Rucker offers a little bit of a contrast. I think that can help them out against teams like Notre Dame, for example, that he can bully his way into the corners, the front of the net, all that kind of stuff, and create some opportunities for Michigan as a puck retriever. And we'll see how far the skill comes along. But I think it's a good contrast because Michigan brings in so many Nazers and Jackson Hallam's and Ethan Edwards and Gavin Brindley's. And I mean, Michigan is the king of the 5'10" guy that can fly and can handle the puck. And it's nice to have the 6'2" guy that's filled out and can kind of beat you up.
Yeah, I think your quote was about damn time.
Pretty much.
Well, I think one of the reasons that McGourty's draft stock did rebound some is that he worked a lot on his skating in the summer before his draft year. So that knock may not be quite as bad as it used to be. And then, I mean, you get to the fourth line, and it's kind of like you still got. I think Nolan Moyle's going to have a place there after Nazar comes back. That's the guy who gets booted out of the top 9, I imagine. And then you've got LaPointe, you've got Draper,
Estapa, and then maybe TJ Hughes. I mean, Granowitz is there now. It's tough to get a read on what it's actually going to be, but because they're not playing Nazar, and then
you got Jake Carradine, who's kind of a jack of all trades, who's been pretty effective when he's gotten on the ice for Michigan.
And he's actually the 7th D tonight. I assume that he's going to be the swingman. Alex and I talked about that in the hockey cast this week, of just being, he's almost perfect for that role, because when, however you want to look at it, someone takes a 5-minute major, now he steps in and can fill that spot.
Hey, can we not do that this year, though?
And then I don't know if there's anything to say about Eric Portillo other than
Portillo.
I didn't do that.
No,
but somebody did. Somebody did last year.
Announcer, right?
I did that last year, but because you see that.
He's actually in the pronunciation guide now as Portillo. So
well, we figured this out now. So, Richter Award semifinalist, still 6'6" or whatever. He's good. First shot stopper, had some rebound control issues last year. That was pretty much the only knock you could have on him.
You had talked for years about kind of getting frustrated with Michigan's goalies not shutting down breakaways or 2-on-1s and that sort of thing. And, it's debatable as if, what percentage those should go in or whatever. But I'll tell you that watching Portillo last year, that might have been one of his biggest strengths. And it probably comes from his size and his ability to move a little bit. But I mean, Michigan at times last year, not consistently throughout the year, but at times was prone to give up odd man rushes. And he was as good as I've seen, at least at this level, in keeping the puck out of the net in those situations. I mean, Alex, you and I have debated this a couple of times, but I mean, it's hard to come up with a whole lot better in those situations, especially when you're talking about, are your defensemen going to go forward? Because if they are, it's bound to happen. And when you have a guy like that back there, and that's a perfect recipe.
Yeah, I mean, Portillo is an awesome player and no doubt the most important, but also the one that I think gives the team such a high floor, is that you look at the Big Ten in particular, and you've kind of got the teams that have goaltending, the teams that don't, and with him back there, you feel very, very confident that it will not be a Wisconsin situation where you have a decent team and it's just undercut by the fact you can't get a save at any point. Penn State as well last year. So I think he'll help them kind of prop up the tent a little bit early on if they run into some issues. We saw him, if you remember the game against Michigan Tech during the GLI situation, where it's not a very talented roster, and he dragged them to a tie in that game. So
that was a game.
it's in the repertoire.
Well, they will not be playing in the GLI this year, or probably ever again.
Hopefully,
they've finally decided that playing a bunch of games when you have 7 to 8 guys gone at the World Juniors is not the best idea in the world. But they have fairly loaded up the schedule. They've got BU. They've got, I forget.
They go to Lake State.
Home
and home with Western, which that place is going to be lit.
Yeah, I might try to go to that game. That is going to be
on Saturday after a football game on Saturday.
Oh, is that
still during football
Nebraska week?
season?
What week is that?
It's either Nebraska or Illinois. It's one of those two.
I don't know. We'll see.
Actually, it might be state. I think it's state.
The state's
it's
going to be.
I think it's
oh,
29th.
no. State's going to be a night game though, so
yeah.
Well, that's out the window.
But anyway, so they play them, and also the team that kind of gets overlooked is Harvard's coming in for Ohio State football weekend. So, those are last year. Michigan went to Minnesota and played Duluth and Minnesota State, and then they brought in UMass, and I mean they brought in and Western. I mean they had some big boppers, and they've kind of refilled that schedule, and I think that's good. I mean this is what you want when you want to contend in the tournament. Is you want to play teams like this, know where you stand up, know what those games feel like, and Michigan has improved their scheduling. I think the days of scheduling St. Lawrence are over, although they do start with Lindenwood, so maybe we're going to get both ends.
I mean, you can say, Art, we have one warm-up weekend, and then we get into real stuff.
Which maybe works out if those three guys are just not ready, or at least Edwards and Nazar. So,
yeah. All right. Position in the Big Ten and NCAA seed. You can say no bid if you're really pessimistic.
Me?
Yeah.
First? Oh,
yeah.
Alex talked about them being right there with Minnesota, and it'll come down. It'll be really close. I think they'll be 1 or 2. They're both probably a slot ahead of Notre Dame. I think that Notre Dame will blow a couple of games they don't really want to lose. And so, maybe it's the winner of that season series. And then in the tournament, I think that the team has one seed upside. But I'll probably say a 2 this year.
All right, Alex?
Yeah, I have second in the Big Ten, number 6 overall, number 2 seed.
That's oddly specific.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So there's our hockey experts projecting the upcoming hacky season. Guys, got any last things to get off your chest?
One thing is they've moved a lot of the 7:30 games back to 7, which I am all in favor for. So don't think that maybe they're going to change, but they're now at 7 o'clock.
No, but it's so hard for me to get to those after MGoRadio. I hate that.
If you're getting BTN Plus at some point this year, don't tune in too late.
You don't got to work until 6:30 on a Friday, my dude. I just got to say that this is either going to be the most cathartic season for Notre Dame hockey ever or the worst, because they're going up against Rutger McGorty at Michigan and Logan Cooley at Minnesota, the number 3 and 14 overall picks in the draft, both former Notre Dame commits.
I mean, they wouldn't let him score anyway, so
ouch. But still, ouch. Can you imagine? That is like JJ McCarthy flipping to Ohio State.
Or flipping from Notre Dame to Michigan.
Well,
and
he was never committed. Although
okay.
I have read the odd Notre Dame message board thread about this fateful quarterback recruiting decision that Notre Dame has apparently made. I don't buy that he was going to commit to Notre Dame in the spot. That's some Tom Loy stuff right there. Anyway, we've gotten off the tracks. We're going to take a break and let Dave get back to covering the hockey game.
Hey, it's Nick Hopwood, founder and president at Peak Wealth Management. We have a lot in common. We both went to Michigan. We're both huge fans, but I'm concerned about how much time you're spending on Michigan football recruiting. This could be time spent with me poring over your cash flow and Roth conversion strategy. How are these Roth conversions going to get done with you spending all your time and energy on MGoBlog looking at the next 5-star recruits? Hey, all kidding aside, if you're addicted to MGoBlog and you want to outsource some of your financial planning to an expert, consider us. peakwm.com/MGoBlog. At Peak, we work with people in a variety of situations. Some of our clients are young professionals looking to optimize their savings and investments. For young people, time is the key. Some of our clients are super affluent trying to figure out when they can retire. Some are high net worth retirees looking for a second opinion on how their money's working for them. Get your second opinion at peakwm.com/MGoBlog.
Peak Wealth Management.
Retire with confidence.
The only thing we can be sure of about the future is that it will be absolutely fantastic. I'm thinking of the incredible breakthrough made possible by developments in communications.
Arthur C. Clarke's 1964 vision is now reality with SignalWire, a cloud platform that enables developers to build the applications that will reshape the future of communications.
These things will make possible a world in which we can be in instant contact with each other wherever we may be.
You can add cutting-edge, real-time video and audio to any product, website, or application with APIs and SDKs for developers of all skill sets. SignalWire is optimized for high-quality and low-latency communication functionality for video, voice, and text messaging capabilities.
Almost any skill could be made independent of distance. Men will no longer commute. They will communicate.
See for yourself at signalwire.com. Use code 2021 and receive $25 in developer credit. Go to signalwire.com.
SignalWire Communications OGs, original geeks of programmable communication.
It's painless. It's online. It's group ordering made easy for your next custom printed apparel order. Pogo from Underground Printing will save you time and hassle, whether you're selling shirts for a fundraiser, organizing a large event, or trying to collect sizes and payment for a family reunion. UGP is here to help. Save time and hassle every step of the way with our easy-to-use site. No more guessing what to order, chasing down people to pay, or wasting time trying to sort out the order. We'll set it up and you can just sit back and relax. We can even take care of individual shipping. To learn more about Pogo, visit us at any of our convenient locations or at pogo.undergroundshirts.com.
Is your online store sluggish, outdated, underperforming? You may be suffering from chronic crappy website disorder. 1 in 3 online stores built by your brother's friend's nephew currently suffers from chronic crappy website. But now, there's hope. Introducing Human Element. Huel has helped hundreds suffering from CCW to turn their online stores around, creating fast, secure, and engaging online experiences that turn visitors into customers and put products back at the top of their search engine game.
Before Huel, I had abandoned carts, browser errors, and poorly animated GIFs. Now, with Huel, I can focus on what I'm actually good at, running my business.
Jeffrey, would you be a deer and pull the Ferrari around?
Side effects may include increased traffic, customer conversions, better ROI, compliments, elation, and early retirement. Why live with the disappointment of chronic crappy website disorder? Speak to your Human Element consultant today to see if Huel is right for you.
That's back.
Welcome back to MGoRadio 8.5. I had a little bit of a cutout. We're doing this, over the internet, which doesn't always work as well as you would hope.
So, hi. We're
Anyway, I want to preface this segment, which is going to be talking about Michigan's performance against the Iowa offense. The Big Ten Network has just sent out a tweet asking what the most overrated stat in football is. Kirk Ferentz's answer, offensive yardage. With that in mind, how'd they do, Seth?
I mean, up until the one drive or the couple of drives at the end when everyone was annoyed, they shut them down. It was they did as you expected them to do. They didn't try the corners at all. There was just a couple incidents in zone. Safeties, Moten missed a tackle. Moten is not a linebacker, should not be asked to play linebacker, but that was just kind of a thing where it was a passing down, and then Iowa moved into a running play and ran a running play, and he buried himself in the line. And, Moore was himself. The linebackers, Colson, for some reason, started spot dropping, which I don't think we've ever seen from him before. That was maybe the most concerning part of this game, that, we use the term covering grass, right, where he's just kind of out there and not looking up receivers. And, Michigan's pass rush came on at the end, but they weren't really getting a lot of natural pass rush in the earlier part of the game, especially when they had, Upshaw out there, and they were playing a 5-man line, and these were mostly play-action passes. So, you're not getting the same kind of pass rush you normally get, and they're able to get into their routes. And you just kind of want, Colson just look up the second guy. If you have a guy go away from you and he's going into the next guy's zone. You want him to look up where the next guy's coming from and get in front of him, not just kind of stay put.
Yeah. I mean, other than that and some blips from Sainristil, like that 3rd and 22 conversion, I don't know if there's really a whole lot to complain about. And then one thing that did stand out just in terms of like, oh, how that happened was the desperation drive where Michigan knew that Iowa was going to throw from the gun that went sack, hit, and 4 and out, and 2 of those from Mike Morris, 2 of them from Yabi Oki. And Morris is now grading out really well in Pro Football Focus stats that aren't offensive line stats. So how did he fare in your grading versus everybody's sort of like turning the corner on Mike Morris as a potential star?
I mean, I went back and actually looked at like your old charting for Chris Wormley, and it's exact. Like basically the same kind of plays. Actually, blowing up tight ends, getting a +2 for destroying his side of the line because he's 292 and he's just a heavy end. Now, his pass rush is not like Yabi Oki's pass rush, where he's just dipping his shoulder and getting around a guy. His first pass rush, he times it well. It's like an Aiden Hutchinson level of timing, right? He gets the exact snap time. He gets in the backfield. Those 2 steps get him around the guy. He's starting from way outside, and he wins that pass rush and he gets the sack. Next down, the guy just got beaten outside. So next sack, he sets him up with a quick step outside, and then he comes inside. And I've been watching Craig Rowe's videos on how to defensive line, and like he gets really into the weeds. And I don't want to do that too much, but Morris is the guy on Michigan's team that you can see has developed those skills, where he's got the coordination to get his hand down at the same time his foot's in the right spot, so he can convert these into pressures. His other sack was the same kind of thing, where he got inside. He was originally supposed to be the guy in a stunt, where he's supposed to be taking, the center away from Mozzie Smith and giving Mozzie Smith a chance to single up and go and get upfield. And the center just kind of like slips past him, and he's got this opportunity now with a guard who's not quite ready for him, and he plants his foot and he gets into a lane where he's not going directly at the quarterback. He's going to the left of the quarterback because he knows that Smith is going to be able to pressure him into that. And because he gets there, the quarterback, there's nobody else behind them. So if the quarterback gets loose, even a Spencer Petras is going to rumble for a few yards. But because of the angle he takes, and he sets that up with his second step after he's getting through, that sets up that sack. And the same thing with that second sack on the 4 and out drive. So Morris is just like so technically developed at this point that he's getting those things. He's ready for the NFL is what he is.
Hey.
or not. But I mean, you can't. He's developed. This is the fully formed version of Mike Morris at this point.
Right, and so other concerning events. There was the occasional gash in the run game. One of those was just R.J. Moten not being a linebacker. Did you see anything else from Michigan's defensive tackles that was a reason for concern?
I mean, the tackles aren't any concern. The only thing in this game is that Smith is out there a lot, right? So his backup is normally Mason Graham. And
yeah, but he was starting in this game. So.
Right. So when Michigan goes to their 5-2, they're going to have all 3 of the defensive tackles they really trust on the field. And the next guy who rotates in is Rayshon Benny. So I mean,
Benny, he was solid in this game. He's the one who drew that hold.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was kind of hoping we'd see more of Benny in this game because Iowa likes to, that's what they do is what he's good at. He's born to stop stretch zones because he's just so agile and long, right?
It's hard to substitute in Rayshon Benny in the first half because Iowa had about 10 plays.
Right, right. But that was the thing. Mozzie Smith is playing every down in this game. He comes out 1 down for Cam Good, and when you're doing that, he starts to drop off. They were more focused on the tackles, I think, in this game, eating doubles and keeping the linebackers clean. Michael Barrett took advantage of that. I think we got a good game out of Barrett. Like what you wanted to see out of Barrett, the maximum you could get out of him in this game, you got. Because it's not the game designed for Barrett, right? They have a fullback. They run a lot of lead zone. So he's the guy who's going to be ending up taking on that fullback. He was responsible for one of the bootlegs that got outside of him. Everybody did that. The more I looked at that, I was just like, nobody hangs on that block longer than Sam Laporta, where he's just like, I'm blocking, I'm blocking.
Yeah, you can hat tip Sam Laporta there and also be like, okay, that probably should have been something that was on film already. And
yeah.
You give him the -1 and you move on.
Yeah.
But it's not a fatal thing. It's not a bad thing. And I think your Claude Mullings take from last week was fairly vindicated, as he had 7 snaps in this game.
Yeah, and
Same
came in
number
after Jimmy Rolder.
And Jimmy Rolder made a play.
Yeah.
So not looking good on the Mullings front. Barrett is a stopgap. Colson had a bad game, but we got to roll with Colson. And then, how badly does Michigan need Nikhail Green back?
I mean, can you get him back? I mean, it's been a while now. I wonder how long these injuries last, because I don't know the insider rumblings. I think that somebody said something was on some board that he's got some leg injury that's not responding well or whatever it is. But, I think Barrett and Colson against most comers is going to be fine. Colson, I mean, it's a weird thing that you feel like you could teach, right? Like, you're in zone, go look up the next guy and get to him. I don't know why you just stopped. And then at the end of the game, he actually, they hit him for a long pass, but he's in good coverage. He takes the tight end, and he doesn't give him a very big window, and they just happen to sail that one in there and hit that over him. But I mean, maybe within the game itself, he improved his zone coverage. It's just so weird. It's it's not something he hasn't done before, right? And cover 3 is not new to these guys. I wonder if maybe he was just kind of, they were play action passes and he sucks down and wasn't really expecting Iowa to be making their hay 20 yards downfield, and that just wasn't what he was prepared for in this game. But I would like to see him used more as a blitzer and maybe get a little bit more interesting with the linebackers, because you're not going to have them be linebackers just going to do their job every single play. Barrett, maybe, but Barrett's undersized and he's going to get popped out by fullbacks and whatnot. If you always have him doing the same thing, you can game plan that.
I mean, but given the schedule ahead, I don't know if there's anybody on the roster who's really going to be on the schedule that's going to be doing that consistently.
I'm sure Michigan State saw the film and has but
okay,
what are they going to do? Improve to 2.1 yards per carry?
Right, you got to actually have the beef and be able to get to the linebacker.
Right.
So
Illinois, maybe. Illinois is probably
Illinois.
Yeah.
Illinois.
God, I can't believe that we're talking about Illinois seriously, but that's the truth, right? They've got good offensive linemen. They can stretch. They can run a lot. They can run power concepts, and they have dudes who can punish you for that. So maybe that's the game they should plan for. But you have the opportunity to do interesting things with them. You have a defensive line that they have to worry about. With Yoki coming on, maybe you've got, I know he was only in on passing situations, but he ended up getting a couple rushing downs too and doing his job. So, if you're going to have a screen game this week where, I guess the pass rush doesn't really matter until third down anyway, you could see another game where just Oki is out there getting reps, getting an opportunity to play, seeing a few things that are weird and getting a couple coaching moments. And you got to remember, he's not brand new to football, right? He grew up playing football in Baltimore. He played for St. Francis, so he had more of a basis there. He did play at Alabama. He wasn't on the field after a while, but he had a couple years off where he probably got rusty, and then last year in the FCS he might have been injured or something. But he's played a lot of college football, so some of the things that he's doing are not as new to him as they are to Derek Morris.
All right. Is there really anything to say about the secondary outside of St. Still hiccups?
No. I mean, St. Still's thing, and I this is where I'm kind of going beyond what I know and just trying to guess. The difference between St. Still and Colson's kind of messing up things that that's a simple thing, right? Look up your receiver and go get him. St. Still, I thought, was trying to play after Iowa's tendencies. So he's set up outside. He's got help inside. you know that Sanger still knows. I don't think that he screwed up the coverage. I think he was playing games. I think he was set up outside, figured that meant that they were going to go inside on him if they threw, because why would you throw to a guy who's got leverage? And then they throw outside anyway, and they throw the flag, and no one's out there because that's not where his help is. I think it was too cute. The other time, there was a late switch. Moten is trailing behind the tight end. Colson is probably supposed to back up and take that away and just let them dump off underneath him because it's a flood concept. And Samer still, I think, is doubling that tight end, thinking, this is Iowa. What do they do? He's going to throw the tight end in his face if it's open. And so I think he's making decisions at a super high level, not like, and it's not as much of a knock on him as you would think, but just kind of do your job.
I mean, that seems fairly far-fetched. I don't know. All right, we're going to take a break, come back, and talk about the offense.
In southeastern Michigan, the yearly cost for a nursing home averages
approximately $100,000.
It doesn't have to, though. Reed McCarthy founded Ann Arbor Elder Law after handling a tricky situation for his own family. Years of experience later, his boutique firm works with clients across southeast Michigan, dealing with Medicaid planning, long-term care, and tax, disability, and family law, not to mention family dynamics. If you have a family member who may need that level of care, or if you're ready to start your own estate plan, Reed can give you a plan for the future. Visit AnnArborElderLaw.com or call 734-945-9693. That's 734-945-9693.
This is Matt Demrest, the owner of HomeSure Lending. We're a local mortgage company here to help you purchase with confidence and refinance with ease. People don't get mortgages very often, so it can be confusing. We'll break down every single line item so that it all makes sense. And at the end of the day, if we're not giving you the best deal, we'll tell you to go with the other company. We're here to offer our simple mortgage guidance.
This is Seth Fisher from MGoBlog. Over the years, we've sent dozens of readers to use HomeSure Lending, and every review that's come back has been raving. I myself used them to refinance after doing our original loan through our bank. I was amazed how much smoother the process was for our complicated loan. Brian used them, you should use them too.
Finding out whether it makes sense or not to refinance or getting pre-approved to buy a new home is easy. Head over to HomeSureLending.com. That's HOMESURE lending.com/MGoBlog to find out more. Or call us at 734-531-9950. That's 734-531-9950. I've got two of my favorite people here with me, kind of an annual tradition, Cooper and Colby. Cooper, how old are you?
11.
Colby, how about you?
9.
Can I get a Go Blue?
Go Blue!
NMLS number 116135, Equal Housing Lender.
Want the perfect game day outfit? Underground Printing has unique, great-fitting U of M apparel and officially licensed apparel from legendary Michigan names like Woodson, Howard, Ufer, and more. UGP also specializes in custom printed apparel and promotional items for groups, events, and businesses. Whether you need one shirt as a gift or 1,000 shirts for a charity walk, Underground can customize almost anything for groups large or small. To learn more, visit Underground Printing in one of our 3 convenient locations around Ann Arbor or online at undergroundshirts.com.
Hey, so I have insurance and stuff, but I don't really know what's going on with it.
Yeah, your coverage probably sucks, and you're paying way too much for it. And I know this because I had a guy. His name's Phil Klein. He's actually a Michigan alum and wrestled for Michigan. He looked at my insurance and he was like, "Yeah, your coverage sucks, and you're paying a lot more than you need to for it."
I also I hesitate to even mention this, but I do have my insurance from a company that advertises during college football games. Well, and I wish that was not the case.
Well, why don't you just get it from a cool guy who actually reads MGoBlog?
Well, how would I do that? They have a website?
They have one of those too. It's PhilKleinInsurance.com. Can you remember the name Phil Klein?
Sure.
Can you remember insurance?
Yes.
Okay. Use those two together, and you will save money on your insurance, and you will actually get better coverage on your home and your auto, and they do life too.
All right. So you're telling me if I Google Phil Klein Insurance, this website will come up?
Yes.
Wonders never cease.
Christ gave us truth on immortality, and yet it would hardly seem necessary that one should rise from the dead to convince us that the grave is not the end. Every being thinks God has given a star that proclaims the resurrection.
Welcome back to MGoRadio 8.5. Who have we been listening to in the breaks there, Seth?
That's Orochen. I'm not exactly sure on the pronunciation because they're Swedish fans.
You gotta figure these things out.
I was listening to to an old Ann Arbor band, and it was just like, Spotify moves on to the next thing like it, and I was like, oh, this is a lot better than my friend's band. So, I looked them up and used them on the podcast, but they're interesting, man. They're pretty musically talented, these guys. Orochen, yeah.
All right, let's talk about Michigan versus Iowa on the side of the ball. That's actually somewhat interesting.
Yeah, I was surprised that you kind of went back and started agreeing with Pro Football Focus after we all were like, "Hey, no, our offensive line mashed. What are you doing?" What do you mean they're just like, pretty good?
No, that's not what that's not actually. I mean, I did say that they didn't actually mash, but the grading was like 72%. And, I think 5 of the minuses came from the backup tight ends. So
okay.
In terms of what the OL and Schoonmaker were able to do, like, we want 66% of their baseline. When I said they didn't mash, because they didn't really blow guys out. But what they did do is they created enough of a crack for Blake Corum or Ethan Edwards not Ethan Edwards, they're hockey on the brain, Donovan Edwards to hop through. And then because they had gone to the linebacker level and it was 6 versus 6, because Iowa was playing so passively, I mean, 6 yards to 10 yards was basically guaranteed. So while it wasn't an impressive performance in terms of like we're blowing these guys off the ball, it was precise. And given the way I grade, we got a ton of half points. So if you have enough control of your opponent that the running back runs by you and there's enough of a hole, you get a half point. Just period. Because the guy you're supposed to block didn't make a play.
Right.
And you didn't crush him into the end zone. You didn't obliterate his world, but you got your job done. And that was the story of this game, is Michigan got the job done on almost every play, and Iowa really made it easy for them. I don't know if I've ever seen a defense that passive.
It's so weird because this is the number 1 defense in the country to S&P going in. Now, I know that early year numbers are weird, but Iowa returned everybody off of a good defense. And, I mean, it's strange that would be what they wanted to do, especially because their safeties were actually really good at helping against the run last year.
Well, I think there were 2 clear things. Is that Iowa didn't want to try to run with Michigan's receivers.
Mm-hmm.
Like the deep shot to Roman Wilson that was overthrown. Roman Wilson eats up a 7-yard cushion and is open by 4 yards. So I think they looked at Roman Wilson in specific and was like, we can't run with him. We got to leave our safeties back. And when they did creep up periodically, that was one of those plays. I think that caught quarters. It was just over. So I think Michigan's speed at wide receiver forced Iowa to play more passively than they would have otherwise. But even so, like, they just got eaten up on the ground. And whenever they did go to something more aggressive from their safety packages, Michigan's like wide receivers were wide open for 8-yard hitches because the Iowa running cornerbacks were playing 8 yards off at the snap. So it was really, really bend but don't break. And then, okay, they got 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals on red zone drives. But that speed option, it was there.
Yeah.
It was there.
Where do you come down? Do you think that was that Michigan had planned for him not to take hits, or do you think that he just, put it in his head originally that he was going to pitch it?
I mean, I don't know. It was just a really strange thing to see a runner do, is that you've got a ton of space, you've got a couple guys blocking, and the opponents are holding the edge. You just don't run out on the edge.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like you don't want to put McCarthy in a spot where he's going to get hit a ton, but if you're going to use this at all, you got to use it the right way. Like, Michigan probably didn't need to run a single zone read in this game. And so if you're not going to run a zone read in this game, fine. But if you do run it and you've got a path for 15 yards, then take it, because you're in so much space that the safety is not going to hit you hard,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The safety is not going to come down and light you up. The safety is going to form up, and as you run by him, try to tackle you. And that's something that I think you need to be comfortable with if you're going to run these plays. And even if you're not, just tell him to get down and not baseball slide. Just get down with his head forward.
Yeah,
just
he's
fall
done
forward.
that before. I mean, the reason why I was thinking it was just on JJ is because he had 2 other opportunities where he got outside of the pocket, one on a zone read keeper, and he goes outside and gets out of bounds like immediately. Like that's all he cares about doing. When there were a couple
And that
opportunities to turn those up.
It gets 3 yards, and it also draws a holding call on Darius Clemens.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was to the safety if he doesn't head outside. And that was at the end of the first half, but Michigan has 3 timeouts. They got a minute left. They're on the 26. Time is not a factor there. Go get the yards. And then on some level, if you're able to be more efficient on offense, you get to stop risking your quarterback, right?
Right.
Like if Michigan scores touchdowns on those 2 drives and they're up 28-0, JJ McCarthy doesn't have to take a hit the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And there's obviously a balance that has to be made, but if they're playing Indiana, just don't run it. If they're playing Penn State and they're running zone read and McCarthy's got the ball, in my opinion, he's got to get all the yards to block for. And then at the end, if you want to play discretion as the better part of valor and get down, fine. But get your first down. And honestly, with JJ McCarthy, like he can break some of those, right? Like if he's one-on-one with a safety, he can put on a move and he can get by that guy and get a huge play. So
we saw it against Iowa last year. I mean, we saw it against these same exact dudes.
Well, and then so back to the speed option. Everybody in the world hated that play call. And there's a pretty obvious reason why is because there's 3 Michigan players trying to block on the edge there because, well, I think it was 2. But if you're running a speed option into the boundary and you put receivers into the boundary, to me, that's a play that's designed to be a keep. Because if you can sell that linebacker and cut up, you're to the safety. And that was exactly what happened there. And McCarthy was just 100% pitch the whole way. And given the way that linebackers' hips were pointed, he cannot recover if McCarthy gives a pitch fake and then keeps. And I don't know if they haven't repped it enough. I don't know if he's just not comfortable with it. I don't know if it was not live. I can never know these things. But given what I have seen from Jim Harbaugh in the past, I think that was live and he just screwed it up. But I don't know.
Yeah.
We can talk about the happier McCarthy stuff.
Well, I mean, it leads into the whole McCarthy approach in this game where you called him, he basically McNamara'd it, and that was exactly what you need him to do.
I mean, he had 26 attempts, 28 attempts in this game, and he had no bad reads from my perspective. And there's always going to be things where he didn't do the maximal thing. But if you get a bad read, it's thrown into coverage or egregiously missing an open guy. So there are obviously situations that he could have done a tiny bit better. There is one TA, which is kind of a throwaway, which is like you couldn't find someone open. It's a lesser version of the bad read. And that was when he dumped it down to Corum for a yard. And the thing I'm complaining about is that the fade routes didn't have anyone over the top of him, so he should have taken a shot.
Yeah.
And that's such a nit. That is such a nit.
Yeah.
And so
in the context of this game, like even giving them an opportunity to like have a play on a ball or getting an interception or something like that.
I mean, if you're throwing it 40 yards downfield, like you can't live
I
like
know,
that.
but I'm just saying, like,
There's
this
a
game
cer- there's a certain
felt right
level-
to Turtle to a point where I was like, the absurd becomes reality.
There's a certain level of like caution that's appropriate, and there's a certain level of caution that is OCD insanity, and I think that would be in that category.
I mean, OCD insanity has never appeared in an Iowa football game before.
But yeah, I think that McCarthy did as well as he possibly could have done. I didn't put anything on him for the backwards pass because, for one, he's got a slant to Bell. That's his first read, and he doesn't throw that because Iowa dropped a linebacker right into it. And I was like, good. And then he comes off of it, and he decides he's going to throw to Edwards. That's a quick decision. And the only reason that gets blown up is because Trent A. Jones just didn't block a defensive end. And he even gets his arm going forward, right? Like 99% of the time, that's going to manage to go forward, and then it's just going to be an incomplete pass. So I don't put anything negative on him on that play at all.
Yeah,
and the
then
pass
the other,
protection.
I was going to
Go
say
ahead.
before we go to that one is the other play that anyone had any question on with McCarthy was when he threw it out to Bell, and Bell thought he was going to turn it up and throw to the corner of the end zone, and Bell was trying to get it all in this game, and there were a couple times where he could have just Bell wasn't playing on the same page as everybody else on the conservative Iowa game plan.
Well, so I can see it from both players' perspective, because that safety is fairly flat-footed. If he gets a ball to the corner of the end zone, it's probably a touchdown. But I can also see it from McCarthy's perspective too, where a pretty good cornerback has turned and is backpedaling, and generally you're not supposed to throw over a backpedaling quarterback.
Right.
And so in certain circumstances, it's okay, like the whole shot that they took at the end of the first half. But even that was 2 feet over the head of 2 feet over the hand of the cornerback. So if you have less of a planned out deep shot, long story short, given the circumstances of the game, I think I side with McCarthy, and that's how I graded it. But I can see Bell's point of view as well.
Yeah. All right, pass protection.
So was it -9 in this game, and 4 of those were Trent A. Jones just declining to block the defensive end lined up over him twice, which is like,
yeah. Why?
And they were so strange too, because Michigan didn't have a back end for either of those. So sometimes you see a line slide one direction and then leave a defensive end to a back. That's usually very primitive pass protection if you can't get anything else right. And Michigan hasn't used it in a while. But there was like no possible way that anyone was going to block either of those defensive ends.
They were both Edwards plays. Yeah, Edwards is a running back in both those plays, and one was a touchdown. But
Jones had Schoonmaker next to him on the touchdown. Maybe he thought Schoonmaker was going to stay in, but Schoonmaker went out in a route. Just a couple of mental mistakes. A young player in his first stretch of starting, so hopefully that doesn't recur. Other than that, was pretty good. We got one loop around on a stunt that Olu couldn't pick up. Oluwatimi. I should only call him Olu in the chart because I can't type Oluwatimi.
I've been there. I know.
And then Hayes got beat like 1.5 times, which probably acceptable because he's the left tackle and you're doing what you're doing. So overall, I felt it was a pretty encouraging game. Like at no point did J.J. McCarthy throw a ball in the coverage against Iowa.
Yeah. I mean, what does Iowa do that scares you? Like, what was Iowa supposed to be able to do that was going to make them so good? Like, what do they? I think it's mostly just picking plays, right? Like their linebacker sees what's happening, they get in a late call. And it's hard to fix that. And Michigan took one delay of game, I thought, that was caused by Iowa just having the right play call and Michigan not.
And they don't bust.
Yeah.
Like, was there anything in this game that was someone having a brain fart and like just opening something up?
No, there's Campbell being like, I can't. What do I do? I've got Corum in front of me. What do I do?
Right, you've got the Corum thing. You have the deep shot to Wilson where the guy is just not fast enough for the defense they've called.
Yeah, that's just talent though. That's just Iowa.
Right, that's just talent.
Yeah.
But they're so relentlessly disciplined, and I think they just looked at this game and they were like, we can't run with these guys. At all. So we just got to put them in a box and hope it works. And, if they have the number 60 offense in the country, this is probably a competitive game. I don't think the strategy was wrong. It's just if you don't have the horses on offense to put up more than 7 real points, like you can't win games. And that's just what transpired here. I did love the first drive when they went to that yo-yo end around again because they had just gotten inside the 20.
Yeah.
And that's like a magic line for Iowa where it's like, okay, now we got to ramp it up, boys.
Right.
And so these guys are fired up to charge across the line of scrimmage, and they get the split flow motion from Schoonmaker. That linebacker level is done.
Yeah.
The linebacker level is gone.
Yeah.
And,
they're all over. They're all preparing to slant basically against counter Trey, right? Like they're ready to do the thing that you do against counter Trey the second they see him moving.
Right, and they hadn't done that before on that drive.
Mm-hmm.
They had played everything pretty passively, and now it's like, okay, now we got to get aggressive because we're at the 18-yard line, and Michigan put on the perfect play call. And, we're this deep into the season, and my RPS numbers keep coming up hugely positive for Michigan. Now, 2 real games.
Mm-hmm.
One of them against the defense that's not very good. One of them against the defense that was just terrified of Michigan's offensive skills. So not totally out of the woods yet. I don't think there's a whole lot of drop off to Josh Gaddis. And Miami's performance kind of reinforces that. So that was one of our concerns preseason. Like, okay, you lose your coordinator. How's that going to go? Not a concern anymore.
You gave a compliment that I don't think I've ever seen you give before, and I loved. It was Michigan's a hard target to hit. Right?
Well, I think I said something along the lines of they're not static.
Yeah.
They're not just running the one thing until the one thing doesn't work anymore. So you get that blizzard of screens against UConn. They're gone the next week. You get the what do they keep doing? Oh, you get all the tight ends against Maryland.
Right.
And you're like, all right, well, this is tight end city, and then they come out and they run almost entirely 3 wide against Iowa. So the plays are different, the situations are different, the personnel is different. They're running under center stuff, they're running gun stuff, and it's not like kind of back in the day. Remember they ran that crack sweep until everybody was sitting on the crack sweep?
Right.
And that they did a little bit with the tight end delay this year, right?
Well, they ran the tight end delay a couple times, and it's like, okay, people.
Yeah, now this is over.
Yeah,
but other than that, like the tight end, other than that one little thing, they haven't allowed what's on film to catch up with what the opponent is preparing for, with one exception. They are still 100% run from pistol.
Oh, God. How many pistol snaps do we have this game, though?
It wasn't very many.
Okay.
But it's such a huge tip that at this point, I assume they're going to do it against Indiana, and then they're going to break tendency against Penn State, because you have a tendency.
Yeah.
So you break it profitably. That's my bet.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was supposed to be the test, right? That was the first big defense we faced, and you're just saying Iowa didn't give us a big enough test?
Well, no, I think they did give us a test. It was a certain kind of test. And also, so 27 points is one thing, but how many drives did Michigan have in this game?
Right.
How many short fields did they have in this game?
Yeah.
They had very few drives, and they had no short fields, so pretty good performance.
Yeah, and I'm glad they scored a touchdown the first drive. Like you said, it's just getting it out there and getting in. Yeah.
Boris is a mayor and a land surveyor with plans of his own. He hates a Ruska, he hates a vodka, bandit from his home. He hates a Ruska, vodka, he never drank a single drop. He hates a Ruska,